Welcome to Raw TV. I'm your host, Gabrielle Doraisamy. Now, it's a given our lives are packed with emotional ups, downs, sometimes sideways, and you know what? Sometimes it feels like you've actually stopped and broken down on the roller coaster of life. And you know what? Not every day can be the best day ever. But that's life, and that's okay. We get through it by remaining inspired and motivated to persevere through the hard times and enjoy the great ones. Today, we have some very special guests for you, and we'll be talking about exactly that: inspiration, motivation, and how we can practice simple things every day to improve our overall quality of life. But first, we want to know what inspires you. Here's Brittany Duffy with Word on the Street.
Thank you, Gabrielle. We are once again back at Southeastern University, where students work hard each day to achieve their dreams. Let's go see what students around campus use for their inspiration.
I think my friends and my family inspire me, making them proud, being the best person I can be.
I think I'm inspired by the life that I've been given. It's definitely a blessing from God. So when I am surrounded by my friends, I'm inspired by their creativity and the things that they're learning, but I'm also inspired by things that God's revealed personally in my heart, and I just want to steward that.
What inspires me is a good CD, some good food, a good chat with guys like John Lorenzo, hanging out with my friends.
I'd have to say people inspire me. Every day people do new stuff and I'm able to see and grow and really learn from other people.
Honestly, looking at the people around me and looking at their lives and seeing how they have such wonderful callings and they have such amazing stories, I'm inspired by them to figure out what my own calling is and what my story is going to be.
Even though the source of inspiration differs from each person, the important thing is everyone is inspired. What inspires you?
Thank you, Brittany. Well, we are joined by our first guest, Mr. Al Force. Thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, it's good to be here.
And of course, we have our lovely panelists, Lydia, Austin, and Gabrielle. They're causing trouble, as usual. So, Mr. Force, you are the District Youth Director for the Penn, Florida District of Assemblies of God. That's quite the title.
That is true.
And you brought several people with you, right? You guys here?
I pay them to come. No, I don't.
So you're actually a Southeastern University alumni, right?
Yes, I was.
So you didn't stray. I mean, you're in the area now, and where were you originally
I actually left. I grew up in Ormond and basically went from Southeastern to Jacksonville to Ormond, back to Southeastern, back to Lakeland.
So this is home base now for you.
It is. We live here.
And so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Myself as an individual or myself what I do?
Yourself as an individual. So you
as
came
an individual, I am married and I love my wife and she is over there in the audience, and I have 2 teenage sons that love Jesus and we just love life.
That's awesome. So how did you come to be the District Youth Director for
It's an interesting story. I was youth pastoring for almost 20 years, and then the district superintendent, it's like the bishop of the Assemblies of God, asked me would I consider doing it, and had to go through all these.
What was your reaction?
I was like, okay, I guess so, you know. And
it's a big decision.
It was a God thing because God moved us from one place to another place. It was a transitional moment in our life, and we knew that this is what we were made to do, so we really love what we get to do.
Wow, that's awesome. I wish I could handle those big decisions. Like, yeah, okay, sounds good. I'll take it on. Yeah. So what inspires you? We're talking about inspiration, and so you wake up in the morning and you have such a big job. What inspired you to work with youth in such a dramatic way?
I think what inspires me is the fact that I got saved when I was in my young adult years. I was 20 years old, gave my life to Christ, came out of a really rough background, but I had an encounter with God. And when I had an encounter with God, what inspires me is I want that encounter to be fresh every day. So I read the Bible, I pray, I life journal, I sew, I do all those wonderful things. Yeah. So and I didn't learn that at SEU, but I learned that in my master's degree here at SEU. That it was important to do that. And once I learned that, I realized, okay, this is a really good way to hear God's voice. I enjoy doing it every single day. I do it. My wife does it. It sounds funny, but my sons do it. We've taught students in our state how to soap. It's a cool thing. But for me, inspiration ties all the way back to relationship with Christ. The Bible says in 1 Corinthians that yet to all, what does it say? Oh,
this is me all the time. This is why I get a scripture tattooed on my arm. That's why I do it.
The whole Bible.
She has it on her arm. Okay. Yeah, it basically says that God has prepared a wonderful plan for those who love Him. and your eyes never seen it, your heart and your mind can't comprehend it, or ears have ever heard of it. And when I look at that, it says God's prepared it. If He's got something prepared for me, I'm the type of person that I want it.
Yeah.
So I wake up in the morning, and there's a lot of things we want in life. So inspiration is God's got something prepared for me. And it may not be what I expect, like being the district youth director, but He prepared it for me. So I'm going to jump all in and go after it.
So you almost look at like challenges as an inspiration.
I love a good challenge.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm challenged by events that we do, by everything that we do. And to me, life is a challenge, but looking at situations that need greater leadership or greater situations to help that situation, to me, that's exciting.
Yeah. So why do you think people in general are inspired? Like, why even give it a second thought?
I think with that question, there's a lot of people that aren't inspired. And I think people that aren't inspired are trying to look at people that are inspired to figure out, okay, what really inspires them, but they don't realize that it's Christ in us that's the inspiration to wake up. And if I didn't have Christ in my life right now, and wake up and know that the creator of the universe lives inside of me in the morning, when I wake up in the morning, I say, hey, I can handle anything. My inspiration is He will not leave me.
Wow.
So I can wake up. People that aren't inspired, I just think they need a real dose of an encounter with Christ.
So,
Absolutely. It's like
It's a
that
good
drive
perspective.
every morning when you wake up and it's like, I don't want to get out of bed, but hey, there's a scripture telling, what is it? Wake up, you lazy. How does that one go?
Wake up out of your slumber. Yeah.
It's a different perspective we have as Christians. You know, we see things differently and we have that inspiration.
Because inspiration can be so many things. So this is a very specific way of looking at it, and I love it. But were there times in your life where maybe you felt uninspired? And if so, like, where do you go from there?
I think if you find times in your life where you're uninspired, a lot of times it's when you feel like you're in a rut. You keep doing the same thing over and over. And when we go through a rhythm in life can become boring because we put ourselves in a boring rhythm. But if we move out of that rhythm and do things in a different way, I found myself during transitional times praying in different places, doing different things so that I could encounter God in different ways. Some people read the Bible the same way, they read the same version of the Bible, they do the same devotion over and over.
You really got to change it up.
You have to shift gears and realize that when you put yourself in a strict rhythm, that sometimes you got to break the rhythm so that you're not receiving just the same thing. If you want something new, you have to do new things. If you want to experience different levels of a building, you got to climb to the roof of the building.
You don't want to stay commonplace.
And that's kind of what you were saying too with the different opportunities that God puts in front of you, is you don't really know what's going to come your way. You don't really know when you're going to find a new reading or praying spot that you're going to love, or a job opportunity. It's kind of that discovery keeps the inspiration.
That's where faith comes in. Faith is what? The absence of things we don't see, but the evidence of things we hope for. So by faith, I realize God's got a plan. It may not be what I want to see. As a human being, my perception is I want to see it.
Very often.
But He has a plan, so I have to submit to Him and understand that His plan is the best plan.
And it's hard talking about inspiration sometimes because it's like the cloud, you know, the apple cloud, like where is it? You can't see it, you know? So how do you take motivation and then just really quickly turn it into action? Because without action, what's the point of being inspired?
Yeah.
What motivates me is every single day I've got students and leaders around the state that I can connect with and sow myself back into them. My legacy in my life, the way I look at it, is if I give myself away, if I give myself to people around me and elevate those around me, that motivates me to do what God's done inside my life.
So you take the inspiration, turn it into motivation, and then you turn it into action.
Absolutely.
Redistribute it.
There you go.
That is quite,
If you're just inspired just for inspiration's sake, then that's weak. If you're inspired and you do something about it,
You need
and
the
you get moving forward.
Imagine if like Picasso had never painted, or Walt Disney had never made Mickey Mouse and shared it.
I know, it's crazy. It's definitely something to think about, and we're jumping into motivation already, and motivation is so important. Sometimes we don't even feel motivated to get up out of bed, forget about changing the world. So Brittany Duffy has a few tips for us on how we can stay motivated daily.
As college students, let alone average people, we tend to get those days where all we want to do is absolutely nothing. I'm asking students what they do when they're lacking motivation.
When I'm lacking motivation, I download a new CD on iTunes and I listen to it.
I think I set goals for myself and understand that to be a successful person, you got to have goals and you got to achieve them.
I'm pretty self-disciplined, so I have things set aside to know when I'm following them and when I'm not. And so when I'm not, I'll have my friends who are closer to me be like, hey, I need some encouragement. Can you help me stay motivated? So they'll kind of keep me accountable. I'll do that, but also just having kind of like a rule of life or something written out where I know, okay, am I following this or am I not? Because I can kind of feel it internally. So when I'm not, I surround myself with people who can help me and encourage me to get back on track.
When I'm lacking motivation, I go to people, I talk, and I see how I can learn and what they're doing in their lives that makes them grow. I go over and I journal, or I kind of just find a place where I can settle myself and just be and find motivation from God.
Honestly, I imagine how bad I'll feel if I fail or if I don't succeed, and that kind of motivates me to step forward and do whatever it is. So, fear of failure, I guess, motivates me.
Each person is motivated by different things. That's why it's important to find that thing and let it motivate you. Where does your motivation come from?
Thank you, Brittany. I'm feeling much more motivated already. We are now joined by Southeastern University's men's basketball coach, Je Marche. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
So we want to know a little bit about you off the court. Tell us about yourself.
I have a 17-year-old son, Carson. My wife, Chris, she's a ER nurse in Winter Haven.
Wow.
Small family, but we love God. We love to serve. In my family, it's crazy because I'm a basketball coach, but when I go home, there's really no sports going on in my house. And so it's really a good balance for me to have. So most basketball coaches, it's 24/7 coaching.
That's just like me, except there's no sports going on anywhere. That's the same thing.
So it's cool to go home and be with my family and not be about sports and just sit down and just kind of be normal for a little bit, because outside of that door, it's all basketball.
So there was no March Madness going on at home?
Well, you know,
is that what you're trying to?
There was March Madness and some March Sadness. My team didn't win. I was pulling for Kentucky, so but we definitely had that week. It's all about basketball. So that's
But apart from that, well, very cool. So we know a big part of being a coach for any team really is keeping the team motivated throughout the season. How do you go about doing that?
I mean, there's so many ways to motivate somebody, but the best way is to first get to know the individual and what their goals are. And then as a coach, it's my job to shape those goals and then to give them little ways to make sure they're attaining those goals. And so we constantly are reinforcing the values of our program. The first thing I did at Southeastern was change the interior of our locker room. They wanted to be champions. They wanted to play at a high level. But when you walked in our locker room, you didn't see those things.
Smelled pretty bad.
No, we have some potpourri in there. That's where my wife comes into play. And so what we did is we put some language around the locker room. So consistently they're seeing the word champion. They're seeing the word, strive for excellence, play at a higher level. And when you are constantly seeing those things, I think that's what motivates you when those days are tough. When you got to practice after 4 days classes.
You can look up and see the poster, and it's like right there, and
Exactly.
they can see that. So.
I have scripture all over my room.
Yeah.
No, it's important to do those. It reminds you why you're doing what you're doing.
And you've seen a difference? Like, I mean, it would definitely inspire me and motivate me if I saw these all the time, but you've seen a difference with the morale of the team.
No, it's the cool thing about coaching is you're judged by wins and losses. And so my first year, we were 15 and 17, and we struggled a little bit, but we were defining our culture. Once we changed the locker room, we changed how we approached the game. We made it more about who we are as a person off the court, our disciplines with Christ, how we walked, our long-term goals. I mean, the second year, we're 27-7, and we lose in the Final Four. And so it's evident that those things work, because what happens is when the young man comes into practice tired, and he sees those things that motivates him, then he goes out and he's with 15 other guys striving for another goal, they're excited. When they leave, they're also inspired again because they're seeing those same words as they go home after practice.
It's very important to pick the best words possible.
Definitely, yeah.
So how do you translate that short-term motivation that you have during practice and keep it throughout like the day and more long-term motivation?
You know, what I like to do is imagery. And so I like to make my guys visualize. And so sometimes we'll sit down and I'll say, I want you to see yourself playing right now in the national championship game.
Wow.
And so when you're doing that, it puts you in that sphere. It puts you in that
right?
It puts you in that zone. And so sometimes what we'll do is before practice, we'll watch the end of a championship game. And so if you can't practice hard after that, you shouldn't be playing.
That's true.
And so one way to keep those big goals going when it gets tough is to always be reminded of why you're playing. I think people don't get burned out because of what they're doing. People get burned out because they forget why they're doing it.
Amen.
And so my job as a coach is to always put those little things out there to remind them, you're playing this game of basketball because of your discipline, your integrity. You want a college degree. You want to graduate. So all those things come into play.
So what, Coach Barsh, how do you motivate yourself individually? What motivates you as a person outside of basketball? Or it could have to do with, it could pertain to basketball.
Definitely outside of basketball. I mean, I came from a low-income family, 7 boys in the house. And so for me—
Were they all as tall as you?
They're all as tall as me.
Wow.
Yeah. And so for me, what motivates me is I have a son who has my last name. And I want to make sure that I make life better for him than it was for me. And that he can do the same thing for his kids. And so for me, when I get home every single day, I'm reminded why I can work 23 hours and it not be a problem. Because I see my son when I get home.
They are the words,
Exactly.
His name is, in a sense, the words that you're thinking of.
You put that together very well.
Thank you.
That's why we go to college.
Yeah. Communication majors or something.
So how do you stay genuine? Because I can imagine you're probably having off days too, and you're in front of these athletes. How do you make it genuine?
But you have to be authentic. When times are tough, sometimes you have to recognize that.
Yeah.
And my job as a coach is not to paint a false reality. And so oftentimes what I have to do is let them know, hey, fellas, we're struggling. And another good thing about sports is you have percentages. And so if you're playing bad, it will show in those percentages. And so you're able to go to those things, and you're able to isolate certain skill sets and get better. But, what other things you can do is to always, at the end of everything that you do, realize it's not about you. One of our core values is to get over yourself.
Amen.
And make it about Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And then when you make it about Jesus Christ and you're humble in everything and humility is in your character, you can't lose.
That's so cool. I'm noticing from your answers and then from Mr. Alforce's answers, it's about perspective too, right? So a lot of this is kind of putting the right perspective on and realize, like, on the field, or not on the field. I know a lot about sports.
On the court.
Yeah. This is all about what you're doing right here, right now, but that's not always the case. So really quickly, how do you make your motivation last? Because I will be like, getting real hyped up about something, and then
You have the inspiration, but keeping the motivation.
Exactly.
I think God gifts everybody in a certain way. And that's my gift, that's my skill set. That's what God's blessed me with. I think if you're not that way, you better surround yourself around people that are. So I really think it's about your environment and about your 5 best friends.
That is so neat. Well, thank you again for coming on the show, giving us some good perspective, giving me a little knowledge in basketball, not paid on a field. So no matter how hard we may try to be motivated, it definitely comes easier maybe to some more than others, especially when you're trying to remind yourself to have a good day and get good perspective. Well, Brittany Duffy has a very special episode of Word on the Street where she finds someone who took it upon themselves to make sure everybody has the best day ever.
For this segment of Word on the Street, we want to highlight a student here at Southeastern who inspires and motivates everyone on campus. Here's Nick Matrone with a story of encouragement.
In high school, I only had one friend, basically. Like, I have a lot of acquaintances. I slapped hands with a lot of people, like, high five! And, but they weren't really my friends or anything, so it was really sad. I first met God in summer of freshman year at a youth camp. And it was like a really great experience and stuff. And then like sophomore year, I started falling more in love with him. I would like read the Bible a lot more just to understand who he is. My journey to Southeastern, it was weird. It started off when I was going to school with my mom, so she drove me to school every day. And during the car ride, we would listen to Joy FM every morning. And then Southeastern came on, like, come to Southeastern, the whole like radio thing that they have. And then I was like, you should go there, because my mom really wanted me to go to college. When I first got here, I went to preview days and I saw for King and Country, and there's one person that I met that really stuck out to me and that really made me want to come here, and that was Dylan Renfro. We had like, after the For King and Country concert, we went upstairs to Addison and we just had like a great testimony time, and then we worshiped together and prayed together, and we just had a great, beautiful time. And like some people were singing and I was like, wow, his voice is so good, and I'm like, these people are so great and loving, and I really want to be a part of this family and what God's doing here. And so I came here and I was like, I really like it. But when I see someone, and that makes me have the best day ever, because at home, like during Christmas break and summer break, like I get really lonely and stuff. So when I see people, like I try to embrace it. I just love being human with people, and I love hugging people because like normally I hug because sometimes all the time I need a hug. I smile at people because I need a smile. Like we like live off of each other, and that's how we keep each other going because we're in this life thing together. We're human together. We're people together.
For this special edition for Word on the Street, Nick and I would like to thank you so much for joining us. Back to you, Gabrielle.
Thank you, Brittany. I'm so happy we got to do a special feature on him. He is very cool. I love seeing him around campus. Well, we are now joined by another special guest, Professor Steffi, who is a professor here at Southeastern University, and you teach marriage and family here.
Yes.
But you actually have a lot of hats. You do a lot. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. I was raised in an Irish Catholic family. I was the 6th of 8 children, and to say that we were on the wrong side of the track would be very accurate. I'm pretty sure that if people had, well, when people looked at our family, they would have thought less of us. But God came into my life at the age of 15, and ever since then, I just wanted to be in ministry, to do whatever He had for me. So I went off to Bible college, and I got married, and then I got widowed. Well, no, then I had a baby, then I got widowed, and so Bible college took me 6 years to get 4 years of schooling, but it was good. And then had some things happen, wound up going back home, making poor choices. So I have actually been married 3 times. I've been widowed, divorced, and tomorrow is 21 years with my husband.
Wow. Congratulations.
He's a battalion chief with the Lakeland Fire Department.
Wow. So, very cool. Well, we thank him for his service here in the community.
Yes.
So what I love about your story is you've been, like you just mentioned very briefly, through a lot. And you've
lived a life.
Yeah.
I have. It's been long.
You've counseled and you've pastored and now you're teaching. How have you felt that those experiences have kind of helped you impart knowledge on other people?
Well, I know when I counsel, I always try to get people to think future questions. Like if they're having relationship issues, I'll say, well, what would you like your relationship to look like in 3 to 5 years? What would that look like? Or if it's a financial issue. So I rarely say always, but I feel like this is very appropriate for this point is always think of the end game. Young people today often don't realize, but you're going to die some point.
Yeah.
And the end game that all of us will experience is death and standing before our Heavenly Father. And so I always encourage people, no matter what they're going through, to become a person of integrity as they go through
really
it.
is the perspective again here. So we've been talking about like inspiration and motivation, and what we really want to do and use your expertise with as well is to learn some practical ways, like everyday actual steps.
How do we carry it out into the real world?
Exactly.
We know what to do and we know how to be inspired and motivated, but what can we do today?
My first thing is to make goals. Long-term goals and short-term goals that are going to get you where you need to be. And that way, I'm a runner, and I realize that when I'm on a very long run that I need to try to do the shortest distances possible. And when you have your goals and you keep them in front of you, the chances of you taking detours are less. The next thing I would say is don't accept what other people say about you. You know, when I was in college and a widowed single parent, we had a missionary come in for chapel, and he just sobbed. He cried. He said, "We need workers. People are dying without Jesus. Please come." And I was so stirred, I signed up to go. And, you know, at least go for the meeting. And when I got there, all he said to me was, "You are a single parent, you can't come." And I'm going to tell you, I just cried. I had tears just rolling down my cheeks on my way back to my apartment. And I believed him. I thought, I'm a single parent. I can't minister. I can't do. Don't ever let people define who you are, because God thinks outside of the box. You know, He is so creative. I don't know what it would have looked like for me to go, but
You qualify the unqualified.
Exactly. Exactly.
So in those situations, you know, briefly, how did you find inspiration and motivation? Because those sound like pretty trying times.
And they were. But I'll tell you, the mind is a powerful thing. And when Coach was talking about visualizing, it is so true. There was a Harvard professor who did a study on the mind, and what he did was he did neuroimaging while people practiced a 5-finger little sequence, and watched the motor cortex of the brain be active. And then he asked them just to practice in their brain. And as they practiced in their brain without moving their fingers, the same motor cortex lit up and did the same activity. So visualizing absolutely does work. And so when I was broken, I got a hold of a book, and it was called Telling Yourself the Truth, and it changed my life. I realized my mental tapes were very negative, like you're stupid, you've ruined it, you know, you're a divorcee, what can God ever do with you? Just constant negativity, and that book made me change it. I actually had little lessons, and I'd have to say, I've made mistakes, but God still loves me. You know, things really hurt right now, but God has plans for good for me. And I watched him. I mean, he just brought so much healing to my life, and he, you know, I started working at Victory Church here in Lakeland, and started out as a part-time fill-in and wound up care pastor for 5 years. And
who would have even imagined, you know, if you would have told
Not
yourself.
me.
And now you're working with college-aged people
For marriage and family, and that is something that's happening a lot on this campus. So that is a very
ring by spring thing, okay? Y'all are laughing, but your guys are looking around.
Now, what do you do? Okay, so my mother, she had 3 children at home. She was finishing up her degree. She was 40 years old and found out that she was pregnant with me. So student loans, all this stuff piling up. So things can definitely be hard, and she's, you know, pushing past it. And obviously now she's in her 60s and she's doing well, and she just got a new job and all this stuff. So obviously it can be done. But for people that are younger like us who haven't really had like the experience of overcoming, and we have the inspiration, we have the motivation, but things aren't going right. We aren't getting accepted to the schools, we aren't getting the jobs, we're a year out from after we've graduated. Like, what would you say?
First of all, I would say trust God, because he has a plan, he has a purpose, and it's not always what we want.
That's like the key that I feel like keeps coming up.
But he knows what he's doing, right? In the long run.
Absolutely, and that's where faith comes in, to believe that he knows what he's doing, and as long as you are where you need to be, it'll work out.
Well, we love that you're here on campus. A lot of people love
And
you
I do
as
too.
a
Thank
professor. Yeah, I just want to congratulate you on everything, and I'm just so happy that you're able to mentor the students here and the people that you've touched in the community as well. So we thank you for weighing in on this, and we'll definitely be able to take some of these practices and put them into action. I'll put some words up on my mirror myself. I'm not sure what words yet.
Yeah, happy 21st anniversary.
Thank you
Congratulations.
Well, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this show. We've definitely had a blast recording it. Make sure that you keep up with us on our social media to find out about upcoming shows or events. And always remember, guys, to live it raw.